Welcome guys, in today's video I am going to be showing you the brand new kickbox rack that I've created for yourselves. If you'd like to get your hands on this kickbox rack and 9 kick drum loops that I've created, jump to the description below and follow the link to my website where you can get your hands on that. Now at the start of the video you would have heard the kickbox preview, and we had this kick in the preview. So I'm going to turn the kickbox off and play you the kick before we added the kickbox. And after. So a major difference. So I'm going to break down what this is doing. So essentially the top row of macros is shaping, distorting and colouring the kick. The bottom row is the movement and the low end groove component of the kick. You can hear that there's a lot going on. It sounds like a completely different kick. You can't tell that it is the same kick, but it sounds completely different, right? So that's the power of this rack and how I've designed it, so that you can drop in any kick and you'll get a reasonably favourable outcome that you can then use in your tracks. So let's just jump through each of these parameters and what they do. So the noise. The noise is adding top end hiss and grit to the kick, so you can clearly hear that when you turn this up, it adds a lot of grit and snap to the kick. Another way of doing this is layering the kick, but this is a great way of doing it. And in this type of techno, this kickbox is probably best for harder styles, but adding noise into the signal and promoting that really helps. Kick snap is essentially the snappiness of the kick. So this is up to full. You can hear, this is obviously compression, right? This is accentuating that snap of the kick. It's a very quick release, a lot of compression, and it's just driving that kick and that snap through, which is really what we want. Drive is simple saturation drive. This is a sweet spot for me, but of course you can tailor it and you can drive this up. I wouldn't recommend you put it up too far. Just be mindful because you'll have to ease off the gain. But this typically sounds pretty good. This is about the sweet spot that I've found. Tone changes the distortion type. For me, 0 position, which is analog, works the best. Clean, essentially this is a dip at around about 190 hertz, where you've got that hollow nasally sound in most kick drums. This is roughly the right zone and the right amount of reduction and gain at that point. However, if you feel it's not, you can adjust this. Well, this seems to work well for most kick drums. Low cut is low cut, standard 30 Hz, but of course you can move this up and down. It's also good as a performance macro for bringing the kick in and out. Thump is essentially whenever you're cutting, this is controlling the cue and the resonance at that point. So this is at nominal value. This is neutral. If you want to push this up, if you want a more extreme sound, go for it. But that's ideal where it is, and that takes us through the kind of shaping, distortion and colouring of the kick. If I just play you before and after, makes quite a difference. So onto the warp, or the kind of groove and motion section of the rack. So this turns and enables everything else here. And these control the sound that you hear. So these to be used very conscientiously is the word I was used, because I've managed to get the sweet spot for the sound, and we'll get into a little bit more about what sits behind all of these macros. But for me, this is the sweet spot. But if you do want to move around, you can. For me, this setting is probably the best. Bounce is changing the kind of bounce and motion, which is why I've called it bounce. So probably one of the most pivotal macros in this sound, so it really changes the character of the sound. Pitch is another one that I would recommend you leave where it is, so it's at 63 Hz. Again, if you do want to mess around with this, go for it, but if you want something that works, just leave it there. But and in motion, and you can probably assume that this is something to do with LFO, and it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is play the kick, and I'm going to duplicate this just so I can remember my settings, but I'm going to mess around with some of the parameters live while the kick's playing. Let's just loop it, and you can hear what you can do with kicks that you put in here yourself. So it could be a kick loop, or it could be whatever. You could just drop this in and have some fun. So let's just loop this, and then I'll do this live for you. You can hear what this really does. So you can hear very quickly how you can go from one thing to something completely different with the same kick drum in a couple of twists and turns of these macros. So, for example, very, very different. All right, so that gives you an idea of how it all works. Let's just go in the back end and look at what everything is and how it kind of works. So the section here is macroed up to the corpus, and the corpus is what's creating all of this madness in the low end, and essentially creating all that harmonic sub and low end content on the kick. So turn this on and off, but essentially I don't want to go into chapter and verse about how I created this, but let's just go through a quick run through of the parameters. So the decay and the timbre is essentially controlling the XY axis of the of the resonator. I've found the sweet spot, but of course, if you want to get creative, you can move this in any way, shape, or form to get the desired effect that you're looking for. The next is pitch, which is the tune. So you heard how that worked and what it does. Again, I would recommend you leave it. And then we have motion, and this is changing the LFO shape. Okay, so the key parameters that are changing here are the LFO shape. The LFO is enabled if we turn it. That's what's giving it the kind of bouncy feeling. The pitch is changing the resonator tone or pitch. Bounce is the resonator type. So for me, the best sounds come from plate and membrane. Again, it depends on what you like, but those are the two settings that sound the best. Timbre or timbre, depending on how you pronounce it, is the material position of the resonator. So it changes the kind of the tonal content or the tonal sound, and the decay is essentially the tone of that resonator sound. Okay, and that's essentially what's been controlled in here. Everything else I would just leave as it is. The dry wet, you don't want to turn it up anymore. Hit 100%, ratio down, and harmonics down, brightness left at nominal value. You can change some of these things, but I would recommend you probably don't, because sound might run away from you. But again, that's essentially what this is doing. So the resonator embellishes the sound with resonated frequencies, essentially additional content in the sound, and the LFO is providing that motion, that bounce, and that groove. In summary, we have a utility controlling volume, but also converting to mono, which is massively important because we are using an LFO, and the phase is at 100%. So it's very much in the stereo without that utility on. So definitely leave that where it is. EQ, standard EQ kick drum. So you can see here the low cut, the dip, which is clean, and then we've got a bit of top end. Another EQ here, which is taking out another problem area in kick drums, which is around about 138 hertz. The noise is coming from erosion, so we're just dialing up the amount. You can change it to a kind of mono version or the wide noise, but I prefer the wide noise. Open up the rest of the parts of this. So the snap here, get rid of some of these so you can see. So the kick snap is controlling the first compressor attack. Okay. So it's very, very hard compression that we're doing here. So we're doing a lot of compression and we're making up the gain. And you can see here it's very aggressive settings. So we've got the slowest possible attack time to let the transient come through, but the shortest possible release. So we're smashing that initial transient of the kick, which really embellishes it and gives you that thick, fat sound. It's then going into a saturator to warm it up and to kind of drive the sound, which is the drive and the tone. Tone changes the type. Okay. Then we have another compressor doing essentially the same thing as this. And that's to essentially retain the kind of transient or the initial transient, the snap and the punch of the kick. And add some gain out the back as well. Another thing that I've added in here, which is just a complementary tool that I use, and I've used in some of the kick loop samples that are part of the rack, if you want to purchase it, is this thing called the Rumbler. It's just standard rumble techno technique using reverb and delay. I haven't macroed this up because I don't like having too many macros because you just get lost, but have a play around with this. Maybe you just want to add some atmosphere, just dial through a little bit of wet, or maybe you want it to be something that's, you turn off the corpus. You can have a bit of fun with this. Standard techniques, guys. I'm not gonna go into how this was made in this video. It's very, very common techniques. If you do want me to break down how I made this, post below, and of course I can go through that. But it's very rudimentary, and there's thousands of videos on YouTube telling you how to do it these days. So I'm not going to spend the time on that. But hopefully that gave you insight into what the rack's doing and how it works. If I go to desktop, I'll play you through some of these kick loops so you can get a feel for them. Again, these were just different kicks that I done various things to. And modulated the kick rack to get the different effects that you hear in these kicks. I used a couple of different loops, but only 2 or 3 kick loops. The rest of the sound kind of variation was created through the kind of modulating the rack parameter. So I'll have a quick playthrough of these. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and if you want to get your hands on the rack and these loops, click the link in the description. As always, guys, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I appreciate the support. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you guys are struggling or you want to get better at making music, whether you're a novice or whether you're someone who is very experienced in making music, doesn't matter. I've worked with people in both camps, and I can help you. So if you do want to get help with your music and you want one-on-one personalized coaching, please reach out to me. I'll leave my email in the description. Book a free consultation and we can see what we can do and how we can help you with your music. That's it for this time, guys. See you in the next one.